Hey yo, welcome to the Godcast.
I hope y'all are buckled up because things are about to get weird.
I don't understand why you chose me.
You want to change the world, son. So do I.
Where are we at in terms of history on the timeline? Where are we exactly? I'm just trying to uncover the truth and bring forth what I can see as the truth. The Bible seemed to be predicting more things than any other conspiracy theory type information, Look, one thing's for certain, that there is so much power in the name of Jesus Christ. That I know for sure.
Welcome to Godcast.
Welcome to Godcast.
The Goodness Over Darkness.
The Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here is your host.
Here's your host.
Here's your host,
Emmanuel Kingman.
Emmanuel Kingman.
Welcome to the light.
Welcome to the light.
Welcome to the light.
It's showtime. What up, everybody? Welcome to Godcast. I am your host, Emmanuel Kingman, and with me is my wonderful completion of humanity, Mimi.
Hello.
Hello, my love. How are you?
I am present.
Present. Is that? Or you are a present, or that's school terms for here? So today's guest was Danunaki Dan from the Rising from the Ashes podcast, also the new podcast called The Roots of Creation with Andy Rouse as one of the co-hosts, and also, I don't know how to say his last name, but Yake. He is from Sweden, so please forgive me, I do not know how to pronounce your last name. And I don't want to butcher it here, but you guys can check them out. That actually, their new podcast dropped today. I didn't get a chance to listen to it yet, but I am definitely going to. And it's all about the Bock Saga, which we get into. The majority of this episode is spent talking about the Bock Saga. Now, Mimi, did you know anything about the Bock Saga prior to this conversation?
Prior to? No.
Do you know anything of it now?
I plead the fifth here.
Okay.
Although I was writing notes, I was a little preoccupied during this interview with helping someone else at the same time. So I was kind of in
you
both
didn't
places.
even tell me about that.
Of course I didn't. But I thought you could just see me over here.
I saw you busy,
typing away, but if somebody needed me, and I had one ear in, and I did hear most of the conversation.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. Dan and I have some synchronicities going on. Obviously, we both also host a podcast with Andy Rouse. So yeah. Andy's got 3 different things going on right now.
It's funny that his is called The Root of Creation, because I think that Dan he likes to find the root of things, especially like words. He breaks down a lot of words to get to their root meanings. He is good at that.
Well, and it's not too hard once you know how the ancients did it.
Right, but he picks some
right.
words
No, he's
that
great.
That you say all the time that you don't even really think about.
Yeah, once you get a feel for it, it's not too difficult, because it's all the consonants that are put together. The vowels really don't mean shit, honestly. It's the consonants that are being put together that you can see how, this word and this word are the same, and that's really all it is. And that's the Hebrew basically is only consonants. The vowels were too holy to speak. Maybe the vowels are God's name. Maybe God's name is A-E-I-O-U, which is somehow pronounced Yahuwah, or something to that effect. It's something like Yahweh, but something more accurate.
I remember you guys talking about the pyramids toward the end of the conversation, because my mind went off.
Get into the microphone.
It went off. It drifted off into this thing called the Great Pyramid Scheme, which would be what we're living in, is the Great Pyramid Scheme.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the ley lines.
No, he was talking about the pyramids possibly being built as like cloud seeders.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But it just made, I don't know what made me think of pyramid schemes, but I went on this whole thing last night and today just thinking about pyramids, and then the word, of course, appeared everywhere and everything I read today and everything I saw. And I just thought of
I
pyramid
wonder what would
schemes,
happen if
where the few people, make the most off of
right, the many.
all of the people on the bottom.
Right. I wonder if we introduce water back into the pyramids, what would actually happen? Because that guy that did the show on Expanded Reality, The Land of Chem.
Mhm.
I
I
want to
do
talk to
remember.
him sometime. We said an initial thing,
What a
but we
cool
haven't.
job he has. Like, that is
Yeah.
super cool.
Yeah. Well, he with the chemical reactor and it's very interesting. I hear Jason Monday a lot talking about how he thinks that it would have a chemical reaction if you reintroduce water back into the pyramids, which is interesting.
Pyramids are such a tricky subject.
There's so
They
much
are
to
very
it.
mysterious.
Yeah, well, it's been kept
And
mysterious. I
there's
don't think
so
that
many
they
different
are actually
options
mysterious.
for what they could be, should be, were, are, all of it.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably a multi-purpose thing.
I think so too.
It's some kind of energy thing. I mean, the pyramid
I
shape
think
is
it's like
important.
a frequency type of, with the chambers and things. I think it was built in a way to create certain frequencies
Yeah,
throughout.
right.
That's probably with water,
Yeah.
with the addition of water, maybe.
And making some kind of chemical reactor. That's probably what it honestly.
Don't know.
Well, it could be, like
I
I
don't
said, it's
know,
many things
diddly.
probably. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know nothing. So anyway, with this, the Bock Saga, if you guys are not familiar with the Bock Saga, I suggest you familiarize yourself with it a little bit. I'll say that my take on it initially from this after this conversation, not initially, I'd been introduced to it a few times, but after this conversation, it is the fallen angels version of events, of them creating their own creation that maybe got stuck here and then they came down afterwards. So I think and he talks about this right away. He says that they are the serpent seed, they are the devils, they call themselves the devils. They are, when we have the us versus them type of the conspiratorial mind, they would be the Bock Saga, not just that family, but this entire area of white people are the ones who have been ruining everything. No offense to anybody who may be offended by that, but it's just true. The fallen angels thing is the same story, essentially. And so it was funny. Dan says that he's traced his family lineage, and he says he's of the serpent seed, which I say I'm a fallen angel. So it's one of the same, just different spectrums on it. And honestly, it's what he said. I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I've come to know in some regards. That that's exactly what happened. And I was watching a video just yesterday, or not just yesterday, but the day of his interview. That day I was watching this thing, and it was called Us Versus Them and the Serpent Seed, and it was all about that. And I got this major download. I'll try to pull it up here so I can read it off. I got this major download that it just came into me about who's us when we say they, who's us and who's they or them. And I tweeted it out. It was an incredible little download that I got. So here, let me try to pull it up real quick, and I will read that. So hold on a second. Okay, here it is. I just got to get to the top. All right, so here's my little thread that I tweeted out, because this was inspired by the serpent seed and the us versus them, and it just goes with this episode. So I'm going to read it real quick. So, in the dichotomy of conspiracy theory underlies the common theme, it's supposed to say, common theme of us versus them, And there's this mythical they or them that is ever present and can never be fully grasped or explained. Well, that's because the they or them we speak of are the conspiracy theorists, the people of God. But the people that we are referencing are actually the us in this dualistic terminology. It exists all throughout history. In quotes, they laugh at quotes us because we have it backwards. They are the United States, which is the US, which is us. They were the USSR, which would be us senior, us US senior SR. And as in they are the original or the classic, and we are the newcomers. So we would be they because they were already here first. So this they believe is their land, and they say we invaded them, and they call us the carbon copies, and we're carbon-based life forms. Carbon copy would be CC, which is 33, which is a very occult number. It's literally inverse, perverse, and reverse that deeply that we would be they and they would be us. That's how deep this goes. So us were here first, made of crystalline structured material through metallurgy and electricity, and we, who is the they, were created from the dust of iron, blood by the hand of God when he created Adam and Eve. So we are iron-blooded while they are copper-blooded. Blue bloods they are. We are red-blooded. There is a difference. There is a difference between cold-blooded and warm-blooded. There is a difference. So it is
You say blue bloods. Did you listen to the same podcast as I did today about bloodline?
No.
Interesting.
You'll have
I'm gonna have to go back because they mentioned blue blood as well, and it was a little bit of a different take on the word.
Well, blue blood means that they're the top of the line, that it's, they're blue bloods. That's how that's referenced is usually like
I'll have to go back and re-listen
very
to what I heard.
elitist type of people use those terms, the blue bloods, because that's literally they have blue blood. They're copper-based life
We all
forms.
have blue blood.
But we're all mixed now. So this is what the video I was watching was talking about. We're all mixed with which is what God actually wanted, because God knew Eve would sin. God knew Eve would have sex with one of the copper life forms, and that she would produce a child, and that child, Cain, would then do evil things and be kicked out, and he would further spread his seed with these copper-based life forms, and so on and so forth, is that they would all eventually have the red blood in them and were washed by the blood of Jesus Christ. It's literal that it is God's Holy Spirit can now be called into anybody because of the blood. You got something on your mind, I say?
The train is moving down the track here.
Okay.
You can see it, huh? I'm thinking, well, we're all red-blooded. And then I started thinking, ever hear somebody say like, no red-blooded American, blah, 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 blah.
Red-blooded American.
And I'm thinking, what's a red-blooded American? A red-blooded anything is a dead anything, because once your blood is red, it is outside of your body.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's where my train went. Welcome, folks. Welcome aboard. It's how my brain works.
Well, it's very
Catch
interesting.
on to a thought, and I just drift away for a few.
Yeah. So my last tweet here, it says, it is a literal war of supremacy. Us, which are them, are losing big time. We, which we are the they, have the Holy Spirit of Jesus Christ, which dominates. This is why Eve was put in the knowing position of sin. God wanted it that way so that all living creatures had the Holy Spirit within. God knew the plan. So God knew the entire time that Eve was going to sin. And what was that sin? It was not eating an apple, but it was having sex with one of the beings that lived here, because as I said in Worship in the Storm 2,
The snake.
the snake,
Literal snake.
is the phallic symbol, the Kundalini energy. It comes from the copper-based life
Down
forms.
under.
So how did this happen? There are two different creation stories in the book of Genesis. It's very interesting, but God who created Adam and Eve is God of everything. And God of everything created those beings who created life forms from what was already here, that they mixed their DNA. They didn't come down and have sex with these beings. They came down and mixed their DNA with these beings. And then from there, they had their own slaves who then were running the world. And that the quote unquote creator gods had their favorites of their children who were then given information and technologies and so on and so forth. And the way that the parent gods were defeated was because the children gods, lowercase g, of all these gods, they took us deeper dimensionally, so deep dimensionally that the father gods, the immortal gods that couldn't die, as Gary Wayne said, the immortal parent gods that couldn't die somehow were killed by their own children. How would that be? Because they went so deep dimensionally that their parents couldn't do anything. They literally couldn't interact with them any longer. So that's how they killed them, because they came down here and they created their own life forms, which are the Bock Saga people. Dun, dun, dun. There you go. So the creation story that I talked about on Worship in the Storm 2 combines with this, and it just makes it that much more secure in how it is actually a reality. So anyway, Dan is a very interesting guy. I suggest you guys check out his podcast. Actually, he said some quite a few things in here that I don't agree with. It was space. I don't he believes in space and the ball earth. He's more of the belief of, he tries to keep everything physical as in what he can produce physical, logical type of, I don't want to say logical, but because I'm very logical, but I'm just very creative. But he tries keeping it all physical. Space to me is the abyss that is talked about. And actually the planets, quote unquote planets that we see, are the wandering stars that are in their chains, that are locked around the sun in orbit because they are being made to worship. And it's a geocentric Earth. Everything else is spinning around us. So I don't know, there's a couple other things in here that I didn't agree with, but I wasn't going to spend my time just disagreeing when I had so much that I wanted to learn, so many different things I wanted to talk about. Because I, like I said about the Bock Saga, I really wanted to try to understand that best I could, because it's the physical side of the spiritual stuff that I have been learning. So you need to know each side of the coin, and maybe there's more than two sides to a coin. Who knows?
There is.
Is there?
The actual side of the coin.
What's that?
Yeah, there's the top, the bottom, and the actual side.
Oh, the actual side.
Mhm.
Look at that. Mimi is a genius.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of Trinity. There's a lot of Trinity podcasts. A lot of number three pyramid, three sides to the coin.
Yeah, 369.
Tripod, Trinity.
From the
There's been a lot of
windows to the
TRI
walls.
words this week for me.
That song's a
And a
psyop.
lot of 555s in the past 2 days still. So
Yeah.
coming along, chugging on down.
And today's
the train
11/11.
tracks.
So
yeah, and today's 11/11.
yep. And I was born. My address was 1111, the place I was born at. I'm not going to say the street address, but it would.
Does anybody want it? No.
But
You can send all the fan mail you want. I'm just
no,
kidding.
because I don't live there. But it's I mean, it's interesting if you guys know it. It lines up with a lot of different things, but I don't know. I just have some ideas of life in itself. So we'll just leave it at that for now.
Dun, dun, dun.
I don't think we have a sponsor for today's episode. So
All right, let's
maybe
shut her down then.
maybe we'll have a new sponsor soon. I'm just waiting for some people to get in touch with me about their lines. If anybody
Yes.
wants to be involved, whether it's any of the ones that I already have in mind or a future commercial, a future sponsor, if you guys want to be involved in that, send me an email, thegreatchakraawakening777@gmail.com, or hit me up on any of the social media platforms that I'm on, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send me DMs.
Yeah, I think we should be sponsored by. Oh, I have some ideas. I won't spit them out.
Yeah,
so
don't
anybody
spit them
can
out
steal
here,
'em.
right?
Google might be listening. Somebody might. be
Hey,
listening.
shit, Google might sponsor us. You never know.
I don't want Google sponsorship. Thanks.
Maybe maybe Google will sponsor us. I don't know.
Hey, I'll
just made
take
that
that
up.
over Google.
That's probably a real thing, though. It probably is. Or Google with 3
I'd
O's.
never sell out to something like that.
Google.
He's tired, I think.
I'm not tired.
Delirious.
She doesn't even know me anymore.
Yeah, I haven't seen him. I've been missing so many
know.
shows. I don't even know. Who
Even
I
when you're
sleep
here,
next
you're
to. I have
still
no
not
idea.
here. All right. Well, make sure you guys check out Rising from the Ashes podcast. Make sure you check out the Roots of Creation podcast. Make sure you check out my website, emmanuelkingman.com. Hit me up for some energy work. If you guys are struggling with your Kundalini energy too strong for you taking over, come hit me up and I will cut the head off the snake, or I will help you cut the head off of your own snake, and you will be energized and in control, all in the name of Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is God. Just as above, there's the supreme God, Lord God, however, the Most High, however you want to say it, that's as above all the way up, as high as you can possibly go. And then so below is where we are, and that's Jesus. It's just all scaled out in a strange proportional way, that there's time dilation involved, there's many things involved, but
Time schmime.
well, it's a real thing. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately we think it's not, but it is a thing. It's
My
just,
days are blending together. I don't know what you're talking about.
of course they blend together, but still a real thing. The way it works is a real thing. So anyway, stay tuned at the end of the episode for a preview of the next episode. And without further ado, here is Danunaki Dan. Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who has been studying the Bible for several decades. He has recently been digging deeper into the origins of humanity from a physical standpoint and has come across the Bock Saga. He is co-host of Rising from the Ashes podcast and also is co-host of a new podcast called The Roots of Creation. Everybody welcome Danunaki Dan to the show. Welcome to the show, Dan. How are you?
Good, thank you. I love the energy. Thanks for clapping for me, everybody. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Of course, yeah. That was all Mimi,
was
by
all
the way.
me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she has many hands. She's writing and clapping all at once. So thank you for coming on the show. You're
Yeah.
you have a podcast, Rising from the Ashes podcast, where you're wearing a t-shirt of that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I do.
I'm very much like your guys set up. The way that you and Romy flow together is very
Yeah.
interesting.
We're kind of a little bit different, but also a little bit the same. And we bring two different aspects to the table. I'm more about like the religious and ancient history aspect, and he's kind of new agey, and he's into more like I can't even say it, Ayurvedic medicine and plant health and natural health, which we're both into natural health, but him a little bit more so, and he does foraging and stuff like that, so he knows a lot about plants and the healthy benefits of them. And he does yoga and practices yoga and meditation and all that stuff, and I talk
Awesome.
about it and I like it, but I don't really do it in the real sense. I guess I have my own style of meditation, I guess, where I just kind of zone out, listen to music or something like that, or I don't know, just peace and quiet is sometimes just meditation to me.
Yeah, definitely is. Yeah, we all have our own styles, and I'll definitely want to talk to him about all his plant stuff. We're about to get a food forest here. I don't know if you heard of Jim Gale.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we just set it up to, it's going to be in March, maybe April, depending on
sometime
where.
after the winter passes.
Yeah, we're going to get a food forest here. We got the blueprint is in the works at the moment, so I'll definitely want to have Romy on and get some advice from him as well.
Yeah, he's really good with that kind of knowledge, and then on the show we kind of keep everything kind of chill and funny and happy, and try not to get too black pill about everything, and try to just I kind of am a baseline guy, and I don't really go too deep into conspiracies. I mean, I do, and some of them I get and I understand, and I go with it, but I also try to bring more of like a skeptical view to it. And try to bring it back down to reality, and he's a little bit more out there and fun, so it's kind of like a good yin and yang.
Yeah, he pulls you out and you hold him down, so it's a good feel. The way you guys ask your questions and the flow of everything, it's really cool. Is he the one that does the little intro and outro, the transfer from you guys talking to the interview?
Yeah, he does the mid one, in
Okay.
between, and he does the end song.
Okay, and who does the intro?
The intro was a beat that was created by my girlfriend's uncle, and then I got a rapper from Fiverr to rap over it.
Okay, yeah, I like it. Was it his lyrics or were they yours?
They're all his lyrics. I sent him the intro
wow.
music that we had, and I told him I want these different types of things in the song. I only needed about 40 seconds, the length of the track that I sent you, and give me whatever you got. And
I gotta tell you,
he nailed it.
Yeah, for an intro, rapping an intro isn't the easiest thing, and a lot of people have similar types of, maybe not similar this way exactly, but try to do something to this effect. But this one is really he knocked it out of the park. I mean, that's really good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good too. It's basic. It has our names in it. It has the show in it. It has
right,
what we talk about in it. That's everything you need in an intro to me. So we kept it short, simple, and to the point, and then get right into the show.
So how long have you guys had Rising from the Ashes podcast?
We dropped our first episode at the end of March of 2020. So
2020 or 21?
2020. It's 2021 now, huh? Yeah. So 2020.
Yeah, Operation Warp Speed. It doesn't seem like it's 2021, but we're about to be 2022.
I started coming up with the idea for the podcast in probably November, September of 2019.
Oh wow, okay.
And I had another person that was going to do the show with me, and we had done one interview, and then he decided he didn't want to be a part of it anymore. He didn't want to do the editing and stuff, because I was kind of pushing that on him because he was the tech guy,
right?
And I have no clue, so I had to try to teach myself how to do video editing and stuff, and I slowly found out the process and how to do it. And so in like October we did our first interview, and then in December I got pretty sick and I got Bell's palsy, and so we were trying to put stuff together still, but he just wasn't really into it as much as I was. So he kind of left, and then that left me like alone to try to figure it out. And I tried to do some things by myself, but it's really difficult to talk to yourself about some of this stuff. And I kind of, the way I am when I talk, I like to have ideas and bounce them off other people to see, where I'm at in my head, because it can get lost in there. And so I would try to record myself, and I'd just mess up every time. And I'd be like, oh, I got to go back and redo it. Oh, I got to go back and redo it. And so I eventually just was like, man, maybe I should just find somebody else, And so while my face was kind of healing up, because as you can see, it's still kind of a little off. As it was healing up, I was just trying to look for somebody and come up with ideas of how to make the show different from every other show. And that's kind of what led me into Bock Saga 2. And then that's also how I ended up meeting Roman. Was I was listening to the Higher Side chats with Greg Carlwood, and he does like a joint sessions where people come on and leave voice messages for him, and he plays them and responds to them on the show. And he was one of those people, and he said he would love to do a podcast and do stuff about space and whatnot and everything. And so he left his contact, so I contacted him and asked him if he wanted to do a podcast. I was like, dude, I got a logo already, I got music already done, I have ideas, I have good knowledge about most things, at least borderline. I can have a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up talking for probably 3 or 4 months, and then we kind of put it all together and formulated the show, and then decided, to try to find out what platforms we're going to use, or whether Zoom or whatnot. And then starting out is hard, or at least in our head it was hard to get guests. It wasn't too hard actually to get guests. So we were like, oh, well, let's just do like an intro to the show, talk about ourselves, for our background. And then we decided to do the 50 conspiracy questions to ask your normie friends. And then that ended up taking 3 episodes, which it was cool because it gives us a little, we just break down all the different conspiracies and then give our opinions on it. So it gives people a little bit of a chance to get to know us and our personality and right, the way that we think anyways. And then showcase, like, these are kind of some of the subjects that we're going to be talking about on this show. So prepare yourself for that. And then then we got our first guest and started talking about Anunnaki, and then flat earth, and then just been going since then, man.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, it isn't all that hard to get guests, but in the beginning it is very much like, who am I going to get? And it's the way that you go about it in your own mind,
Yeah.
fussing over it. And then, I'm at a point now where I was always someone who needed to plan like a month and ahead, but now I'm like, I'll give it a week, because usually if I plan out more than 2 weeks, I'd say the people fall through about 90% of the time. When it's not something that is, right on time, and if they don't want to do it, then I'm like, all right, well, it's divine timing. I'll just sit back and relax and let it know that or just know that it'll happen if it's going to happen. And if it's not meant to be, then it won't be. And no matter how hard I try or frustrate myself, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. So it definitely does get easier as you just build confidence in yourself. Really, it's that's like the hardest part.
And getting out of your own head too, because
Yeah.
when we first started the show, I used to like edit like every little thing and be like,
Right.
oh, here's an gotta take that out.
You
And then
can't
after a
perfect
while,
it
I'm like,
enough.
man, I gotta let it go. I gotta just let it go, because it's consuming too much of my time just sitting here editing and listening to other people's shows. They're just like recording and then putting it out like
Right.
within an hour. And I'm like, man, I need to let go. I need to not be so concerned. And and the whole in your head thing too about getting guests, it's like, oh, well, we don't even have a show. There's nothing to show them that
Right.
we have anything. So why would they come on the show?
Right.
But when you reach out to people are like, yeah, sure. They don't even ask like how many views you've had or how many
Right.
listens you
I've
get.
never
They
had
don't-
anyone
they don't-
say anything like that. to me.
Never even care, man. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a lot of head stuff. And so
Right.
you just need to get over it and just be yourself and just do it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, because I thought about it for so long, and I just needed to just put it into action. I talked about it for like a year before I even did it, you know.
Right. Well, my podcast, I wasn't even going to do conspiracies. My podcast was going to be about the first 13 episodes are my story.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to try to help people, have people, send me emails to come onto the show to talk about them overcoming like weight loss or trauma, drug addiction, all that sort of thing. And I never got anyone contact me because I didn't have anyone listen to the show. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to keep doing, what I like to do. And I tried doing that in the sense of getting guests, but then people aren't all that willing to come forward about all their deepest, darkest secrets the way that I was. So then I had to, alter it. And now it's just at a point where it's like, well, I'm just trying to get to the truth, and I want to bring that truth to whoever wants to listen to the show. I do certain things, energy work. I'm a psychic. I am a big researcher into things. When I research something, I research it entirely, and I think about it every which way possible. And having guests on, experts in different fields, it really just like does a whole nother thing to your research game. It goes from watching two people talk on YouTube or whatever to now you are absorbing the content exactly from someone who has dedicated at least enough time to become a semi-expert to inform you on these things. So just the process is so wonderful.
And I end up even asking the same people the same question, or different people the same question, just to get a different perspective on that question, because I don't want to get trapped in this dichotomy where I only accept one thing as true.
Right.
And everybody has a different way of seeing things and believing in things. And I think as long as you believe in it, in whatever it is, as long as it makes you a good person, then I'm cool with it. But if it brings you down, or that it's negative, then maybe you should think about getting away from that. But and I have my own ideas, and people don't like mine. I still think that Earth is round. So I guess I'm behind the times a little bit, but I get yelled at by flat earthers all the time because I talk shit on their
well, it's such a weird
Instagram,
thing
so.
though.
So many arguments for the
I'm
shape
probably-
of the earth.
Yeah, I'm probably not winning any fans that way or anything, but
You got to be
that's-
true to yourself.
That's how I am, and that's the person I am. So I'm just gonna be me. you know?
Yeah, that's all you really can be at the end of the day. And doing the podcast, it's becoming the observer in a 3D sense. It's not just, oh, I'm observing my behaviors in my own mind. It's I'm actually watching myself. I'm actually listening to myself. And is there something that I can change about myself that I'm doing that I don't like, or maybe someone else will perceive it in a wrong way, and it helps me be more exact. Like you just had Gary Wayne on, and
Yeah.
you dropped his episode the day after I interviewed him. So you know, and I had it set up for a while. So it's that's one synchronicity that we had together. And we probably come at it. I haven't listened to your full episode with him yet, but I'm sure we come at it from a different angle.
Totally different.
Yeah. And his style is he's very talkative because he likes to be very exact with what he says. He doesn't leave anything up to interpretation. He paints a picture. It's like a beautiful Mona Lisa that he's painting with his words. So, I really enjoy that.
Gary Wayne is fantastic. I love talking to him.
Yeah.
He's so knowledgeable, and I learned so much just from talking to him. And I appreciate it. And I love guests that just keep talking and ramble on, and it's beautiful. It makes my job a lot easier. I don't have to ask no questions. They just carry on.
Yeah. Well, so what it reminded, as soon as he said started talking about the Scythians and the
Yeah.
Danu tribe, I was like, okay, wait a second. Now that started putting me with the Bock Saga, and I was like, okay. I started thinking of you, and I was like, okay, how does this relate to the Bock Saga? Because I heard you on Andy's podcast
Yeah.
talking about it, and it lines up what he was saying.
Well,
with
no, he had a differing opinion than I did, but that's fine.
So what I mean is that what he was saying about the Scythians, how they came from here to there and they moved about in a certain way. I forget exactly what it was, but it was something, and it clicked in with what I had heard you talking about with the Danu tribe. So just to that effect, not that everything was exactly the same, but it was interesting.
So what he says is that the Scythians are the Dan tribe.
Right.
That like there's not really the Scythians and Dan are the same thing. And in Irish folklore, there's the Tuatha De Danann, but then there's also another group called the She, which is like Sidhe. This looks like Sidhe, but it's actually called the She in Irish. And the Sidhe are supposed to represent the Scythians, and the tribe of Dan is supposed to represent the Tuatha De Danann. Now, if depending upon different people you ask, they're either a totally different tribe and not from Israel, or they are the same tribe and they are from Israel. So it's kind of left for interpretation. But what happens with the Bock Saga is they also have a person in their story named Dan, who finds Denmark, and Sven, who finds Sweden, and then another one who goes to Russia, the Rosette. So you still have this Dan tribe, and it's interesting when you go biblical about it. It says that the Dan tribe was kicked out of the tribes of Israel, and that they went to the north and everything, and then they spread around, and all the rivers off the Black Sea are all named after Dan. There's all kinds of towns in Ireland that are all named after Dan. So I mean, there's a lot of information about this Dan tribe. So it made me get interested in all the rest of them and where they came from, and it's pretty interesting.
Well, that's interesting, and I definitely want to get into that in a moment here, but I want to talk about for a moment your newest podcast that's coming out, The Roots of Creation, with Andy. So another synchronicity is that we both co-host a show with Andy. So I have Worship with the Storm with Andy, which actually we have a live one this Friday. And so why don't you tell us about your new show coming out?
Well, first of all, when I started the show, I wanted to get into Bock Saga, right? And so I wanted to get a hold of Jim Chester, who was kind of the face of the Bock Saga at the time. And after I had started the show, I was trying to search for him and find him, and I had found out that he had actually passed away. And so I ended up hearing Yake Hagstrom on some other podcasts that I had come across, I think Interverse and The Way of the Truth Warrior. And I was like, oh man, I got to get him on the show, because he's the new like spokesperson, I guess you could say, in a way. I don't know if you would agree with that, but so I reached out to him, and I was able to talk to him and get him on the show. And on like episode 11, I think it is now, because I changed the way I number them. But so the whole show has been very pivotal in trying to break down Bock Saga. And so I was able to find him and get him on the show, and then we just connected, and we still talk probably every day, every other day or so. And even though we're like 9-hour time difference, he's 9 hours ahead of me because he's in Sweden. And we clicked right away. And then we had Andy on the show, and we did it like a swap cast. And then when we had him on the show, we got super deep into like Anunnaki and Enki and Enlil on that swap cast. And afterwards, I was just like, dude, that's so. And I broke down Bock Saga in for him a little bit at the end of that, like the last 20 minutes or so. And then he was just like, what? And then he started diving into Bock Saga and was like, dude, this is insane. This is like all lining up for me. And I was like, he's like, we should start a podcast. I was like, well, me and Yake have already been talking about getting one started. And we were thinking about doing, a Bock Saga podcast and just doing straight Bock Saga stuff. So I could kind of get away from it a little bit on the main show and then push it over to that place, and people could go over there to hear more about it, and continue to have Yake on and just do episodes here and there with them, but also to have a place where we can just talk about Bock Saga. So I pitched it to Yake and introduced him to Andy, and they did a show together, and then we all just started kind of talking together and trying to figure out everything and how we're going to do it. And Yake is very connected in Sweden to a lot of these people who were around Eeyore Bock in the formation of this whole story. So he knows the guy that wrote the Bock Saga introduction book. He knows all the people connected to Eeyore and that were there at the very beginning, and even more people that I've never even heard of. And he said they've never even talked before on audio or YouTube or anything, and they all have stories to tell. And so what was gonna just be us talking about Bock Saga and digging into it has transformed into learning everything straight from the horse's mouth, I guess, so to speak, in a way. And we're gonna get like these people that are very connected with the saga on the show, telling us what they know about it that's not in the books,
Well, that's awesome.
So the dirty behind the scenes details. And so we're really looking forward to that. We want to talk to these people and just hear what they have to say. Also, ask them the hard questions and easy questions for people to try to wrap their head around and be able to follow, because I mean, it's not a very big book, but there's a lot of stuff that encompasses it. And to just try to tell somebody just about the Bible, it's going to take more than a couple hours. It's not just a couple hour thing. It's a long period thing to even figure out everything that's in it. So we're looking forward to that, because I really think that with the saga, it explains a different part of history that we are not aware of, and that it could even possibly explain who these builders were that built all of these monuments and everything.
Are you talking about the Tartaria type of?
No, I'm just talking about all these monuments that are aligned to north. What's the significance of the North Star, the Ursa Major, the Ursa Minor, the bear, the Great Bear, the Little Bear, and why does everything point to the north? What the stork bird, that brings the babies, used to take the souls of people. So you see a lot of mythology or symbolism on stelas and carved in rock, where it shows like a bird carrying like a severed head. And that's not to say like the bird is picking up a severed head. It's a symbolism for the bird is taking that consciousness or that soul of that person to the North Pole to drop it into the hole to maybe reincarnate or go through the whole process over again and reincarnate the soul through the hole in the pole in the top.
Well, that's interesting. I was watching this guy on Crater Earth. He's like the only guy that does Crater Earth like as detailed as he does. I don't even know how to pronounce his YouTube name. I mean, it's really phenomenal stuff what he's talking about. And on one part, he was talking about somehow the storks were involved. I forget exactly what it was, but it was like Satan's seed. But he wasn't from a Christian point of view. He was saying that there are parasites that have invaded us, and that they act like insects, these parasites that are in our government and our financial institutions and all. They act like insects, and he really breaks it down. But then one part he talks about the stork, and he shows, a stork bringing baby, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe that's what that means. But I mean, everything means more than one thing.
It's like the heron too, the blue heron or the ibis of
Okay.
Thoth. It's the bird, it's the thought with Thoth. It's in your head, it's your brain. People ask like where the seat of the soul is, or where the seat of consciousness is. Some people believe it's the pineal gland. Some people think it's like just behind the eyes. Some people think it's, who knows, different places. Like, where do your thoughts come from? Do they come from the ether, or do they originate in your own head? A lot of people speculate on those things.
Well, do they actually come from your heart? Maybe. I think maybe the soul might be attached to the heart. I'm thinking. I know exactly what you're talking about behind the pineal gland. That I have energy centers. My energy centers are completely open, and I feel strongly. I feel that there, my pineal gland.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's where thoughts originate. I don't know where they
Yeah.
come from. But I listened to someone breaking down heart transplant people, and how one person will gain the personality of the person that they received the heart from, different traits and all sorts of wacky ways. There's huge studies on this.
Yeah, that'd be some interesting information to get a little deeper into. I'm to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. The Bock Saga has a different spin on it. But the Bock Saga also says that they are the devils. They are the horned people. They
that the Bock Saga people are?
Yeah. The
Okay.
Bock line is the devil.
Okay. So how do you spell Bock, by the way, for anyone listening?
B-O-C-K.
B-O-C-K. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the Bock Saga, can you break down a little bit of where does the Bock Saga come from? And especially now you're saying that they are the devils. They're claiming that they are. So is that the seed, the serpent seed, maybe, or is that something different?
It is a serpent seed, basically.
Okay.
In a way. So before I get into it, let me explain a couple things. You see like the Mercury staff, right, with the two serpents wrapped around it.
Okay.
I think there's actually two serpent lines and not one serpent line.
Okay. So is that where Cain and Abel come in?
Well, I don't necessarily know the answer to that one.
Okay.
I don't even know if if I know a connection about Cain and Abel from this, because it's the same, but it's not the same.
Right.
And I haven't really put together those aspects. I've put together Ra with like Satan.
Okay. Yeah, I heard you talk about that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then Odin with like God or Enlil, or or possibly no Enlil at all, and so the two snakes wrap around the pole. One's one color and one's another color. I think there was two different snakes. I think that when people refer to this battle that's being had over Earth, a spiritual battle, I think that's what's going on, is these two brothers are still battling for reign of the Earth, just like in the Sumerian tales. I think it's still right on that same path, that same chord. I think the reason why that repeats in so many different mythologies is probably because there's a true source to it. And interestingly enough, with the Bock Saga, you can kind of figure that out if you look at it. They don't directly say it. It's kind of something that you have to extract.
Well, can I posit a thought that I had earlier this evening? I was telling Mimi about this, is that so the Chinese dragon, or the Mesoamerican dragons that they depict, they look like lions. They're in the face.
Yes.
If you were to perceive it that way, and the Bible talks about the 7-headed beast with the 10 crowns, the 10 horns,
Oh, yeah.
and it has the mouth of a dragon, or a mouth of a lion, the body of a dragon, and it has the bear claws
Yeah.
of. So my idea is that dragons are T-Rexes. That's what
Okay.
it is. But I
Yeah.
actually had the thought today that serpents, the dragons, are lions that had the hind legs taken away from them. Then they were forced to crawl on their belly.
Okay, yeah.
And they're called dragons because they're
Dragon on.
dragon. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I take those chimera beings as symbology, and I kind of break down their symbology. So in the Bock Saga, there was 7 hills, right? Or there's 7 islands in Udinma, and the 10 kings, or the 10 crowns, were the 10 other tropical kingdoms, and then there was 3 northern kingdoms of the Caucasian people. And so you have the 10 kingdoms and the 3 kingdoms, which meant 13 kingdoms, which was the 13 tribes. And I think that breaks down also into biblical with the 13 tribes and the 12 tribes, and then I think now there's 10. But I think all of that is relative also to the zodiac, as above, so below. So everything that happens in the sky clock happens on the earth clock, and everything just repeats itself from, fractalization above and below. The 7, so the 7 heads is that, and the 10 crowns, the chimera being the dragon. I don't maybe what were you saying? I think I lost track.
No, I just meant that, like, so it started out, so felines and serpents are like natural born enemies. So if they were 2 brothers, that they were 2 lions that were sent to guard the earth, and one maybe had sex with Eve, in some sense, or whatever, just as a basic thing, and then had its hind legs removed and was forced to crawl the earth with its one arm. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think so. That whole symbology to Dan is the snake, right? Dan is the snake in the grass. Actually says it's the horned snake in the grass that nips at the heels of the horse, and it'll create a path for itself, or however that goes on. But it also talks about the dragons, the lions. I think maybe the lion is a representation of Judah and the tribes of the Jews in the kingdom of Israel. And then I get thinking in my head, and then I lose my thought, man. Does that ever happen to you?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. But so I do think that it's symbolic in some sense, that we have to have things, we have to be able to relay these stories, and there is so many scales on it. But I also do believe that it is because I've interacted with these beings in the astral world, the spirit world, what have you, that I've interacted with many of the different beings that are depicted, angels that are depicted in the Bible, the Book of Enoch, and so on and so forth. All these different crazy things, I've seen all of them, and I'm not a Bible scholar or a Christian, so it's interesting. But what were you going to say?
Yeah, so I recalled, and so Enki, in the Sumerian tales, is the god of land, and Enlil is the god of air. So I think in one aspect you have a dragon, a snake on the ground, right? And then you have a flying dragon, which is a symbolism of the air dragon. So the 2 different serpents, right? Because one is a flying one and one's a land one, and dragging itself across the ground. So those, I think that's where you get those 2 different ideas of land and air, because Enlil is supposed to control the sky according to the Sumerian myths. And if you get into like Sitchin, then he's controlling the airports, or whatever, the spaceports of ancient times, which could be believable or could not be believable. It depends how you want to go with that. But I've kind of left the whole ancient alien thing off to the side lately, and I try to deal in the realm of physical reality and what we see, and not into the woo woo or the alien or the interdimensional type stuff, and just try to explain stuff, or see if I can even explain stuff just with all that stuff taken out.
Well, that's a good approach. Take out the variables.
Yeah, and just see if I can even explain it that way. If I can't explain it that way, then I have to include those other things, right? And it would lend more credibility if I can't explain it away.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that brings us to the Bock Saga, and so it is very interesting. And I've been studying lately the two different creations that are in the book of Genesis that are talked about, Genesis 1 versus Genesis 2. There's clearly two different creations happening, and I just happened upon this video, before you and I hopped on, and it was talking about how we were made in the image or the illusion of these beings that kind of created us to look like them, the Anunnaki story, if you will. And it's interesting. So forget about that for a moment. So for the Bock Saga, how does the Bock Saga come into play? Is this the oldest known history that we have come across?
Yes, according to the Bock Saga, they believe that this was an oral tradition handed down through the Bock family line for millions of years. Yeah, they say the Ice Age was 50 million years, and that the Paradise time was before the Ice Age.
So the Ice Age that we know of, the Younger Dryas, or we're talking before?
The Younger Dryas was the end of that Ice Age.
So it lasted 50 million years, and we're only aware of what, like 2,000 or so?
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, that in itself is strange in the
big claim.
Amount of time. Yes, that 50 million years, that is an extremely long period of time. But I will say this, that I don't think that what was for our human selves now, what was 12,000 years ago, was not actually 12,000 years ago, because I believe it's Inception style, the way dimensional travel works, and that the deeper you go down into the dream, the slower time moves. So that on some scale down here, maybe it could have been 50 million years, but it actually was probably maybe like 50,000 years on the dimensional scale that we used to be on. So
yeah, I think, what is the Earth, like they say 7.86 billion or something like that. So
yeah,
I mean, it's and dinosaurs were around 65 million years ago. There are kind of things that they have found, rock drawings and stuff of people with dinosaurs or riding dinosaurs. I don't know if those are fake. Some people believe they are fake, so it's hard to say if it's true or not true. But there does exist some relics that depict humans with dinosaurs. So,
well, there's also a map from 1587 that has dinosaurs on it, and dinosaurs weren't discovered until the 1800s. So,
and there's people that think dinosaurs are real. There's people that think they're baloney. So it again, that's another thing that's kind of up in the air.
Right.
It's not, you can't really prove it either way, because any information that you give to prove or disprove, the other side will say is not valid enough information.
Right. Well, to me, I think that all of creation has gotten smaller and smaller. We've been losing oxygen and carbon dioxide, and that the dinosaurs were huge reptiles or megalithic, not megalithic. I can't think of the word. The creatures. The
megafauna, like the megafauna.
Yeah, megafauna. Yeah, 85% of them died off from North America alone at the end of the Younger Dryas. So there's so many things about that, but dragons were basically rebranded as dinosaurs, and
quite possibly, right? I mean,
right, and they mix everything together, and it's so confusing, and it's all just so fuckery, basically. They put on fake bones on display as if it's a real thing. Like, why don't you just put on a whole fake dinosaur? Why the
Yeah.
fake bones? Because you're trying to deceive the untrained mind.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. They like took all the stones away from Stonehenge, and then they replaced them all with
Right.
stones. And some people
Yeah.
believe they didn't even put the correct stones back, that they
Right.
put forgeries back. So it's like I don't know a lot of things to believe anymore. So I try to find evidence that is that can't be pulled either way.
Right.
And that's hard to do. It's not very easy to do. So I try to pull together all the different mythological stories and try to find like what's true in all of them. And they say the devil's in the details, right? So screw all the details. What do they all say? Basically, they all say we came from the sky. We were created by some other being, and there was a flood, and here we all are. So those are the only things that I can really say for sure that are most likely true. And whether or not we came from the sky could mean that we are star material, or we were seeded by some comet that hit the earth. So, and I kind of lean that way with panspermia, because I see the eggs or the planets, the terrestrial eggs, as like a egg and like an ovary, and a comet as like a sperm that is seeding that ovary with life. And that so I'm kind of into the whole panspermia thing.
So what's your take on space before we get back to that?
I look up at the sky, I see stars, and they're somewhere. I think there's probably space out there. I think it exists. I can see the bright planets. I'm into space. I love Star Wars. I love all that stuff. I know we're probably conditioned to believe things a certain way, but also like it's I don't know, it's something that for me hasn't been proven enough to be completely fake, that I can't believe it anymore.
Right.
I know like NASA, I don't trust NASA for shit, but and I don't think we probably went to the moon. But at the same time, that doesn't mean space is completely fake. I know, people will say, well, the images of the planets are CGI. Well, you're right, but they're also stitching together a bunch of different images to form one image, because they're traveling through space, and stuff in space is going fast. So they're not going to get a crisp image, so they're splicing stuff together to try to make it crisper. And I think that's sometimes why some of the images don't look exactly like the previous ones, because they're trying to stitch together a spinning ball. But that's how I think of it. And really I think this planet could be anything that you want it to be, because I think how we live and what we live in, we can manifest whatever reality we want. So if you want to go to heaven or you want to go to hell, that's where you'll end up if you believe it.
Okay. That's interesting. So, but pivoting back to the Bock Saga. No, I asked the question because I like in everyone's different take, as we were talking about earlier. So getting back to the Bock Saga. So you said something very interesting, and then I veered away from it right away. Was that they call themselves the devils? So this
They do.
And they're coming from 50 million years ago. So
yeah.
So can you kind of broadly paint a picture of what these people are, who they are? I know that the sound DN, the sound Dan or Den, is very important to this part of it. I know that the sounds of words, as I'm putting together, without the Bock Saga, is the same conclusions, that the word magic, the vowels being the vowels being interchangeable and the consonants just being there. It really helps you understand things on a whole new level. So can you just kind of give us a broad spectrum of how what the Bock Saga is saying happened
Yeah.
from creation to the end of the ice age?
The language stuff is really interesting. I don't know enough about it to really bring that forward enough. I'm still asking Yake questions about words and stuff all the time and seeing if I can figure out things. But all in all, the Bock Saga is basically detailing, it's saying that there was a paradise time when the world was in balance, ball, lance. So you get a ball, a ball with a lance through it like this. And this was a representation of the North Pole and South Pole, and the ball would spin, and the sun was at the equatorial line, and that there was paradise on Earth. Everything was tropical. There was no seasons because there was no tilt. The tilt is what caused the different seasons to happen, because it was tilted away from the sun so slightly that it created, winter over here and everything. So
they say what caused the tilt? Do they talk about that?
Yeah, they do. And off the top of my head, I can't remember what actually caused the tilt to happen.
Okay.
But it tilted 23 degrees. I think that's what a lot of significance with the number 23 too, and a lot of significance with tilting being fallen or falling, and you see a lot of fall, that word coming up a lot in different like in Bible stuff, the fallen angels and stuff.
Right. And so the inverse of the 23.4 is the 66.6, which is the devil's number.
Right. Well, and in the Bible it says 666 is a human number, right? It doesn't say
the
it's
number of man.
And it's the number of man. It's not the number of a monster or some leviathan that's coming out of the sea or some crazy other rapture thing. It's the number of man. We're destroying this planet, if you want to look at it that way. But so the tilt is important because at one point, everybody on the earth was tropical, and the Acer or the Odin was in Helsinki, Finland, and that was the North Pole. That was the original North Pole, and it was hell, and it was also Asgard, and it was also Odin. So in hell there was a hole. That's the hell hole, and that's the hole that would go down into the inner earth. Perhaps there's a southern hole. I don't know. It doesn't detail it in this.
So are we talking like different levels that you could be on, that the earth was maybe like an accordion type of deal?
No, it's round.
Okay.
It's a ball. Like I said, it's a ball with a lance through it. So you have a North Pole and a South Pole. You have your torredo fields that are coming out of it, like that. And the North Pole was where their civilization was, and Helsinki was actually at the North Pole, and that's also where Asgard is. That's also where you take the Bifrost Bridge, is from Asgard, from the pole. So possibly you could travel to different realms from going inside the pole. I'm not sure how that all works. But then so they're at the top of the planet, right? So there's this 7,000-year-old ostrich egg. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but it depicts 3 rings at the top of the egg, and then it shows 3 pyramids, and then what appears to be the Nile River.
Oh, really?
So that's interesting, and gives a little bit more credibility to the fact that
a map drawn on this egg.
Yeah, and that they're at the top of the planet, which is what they say in the saga. So then the ice age happened, the fall happened, the ice age happened, and they're trapped in ice in the north for millions of years. and they had to learn to survive. So they started digging holes and living underground. And you see a lot of, there's these underground complexes all over the planet, perhaps because they were trying to keep warm and survive in inhospitable climate because it was snowing and icy. This is kind of like representation of the ice giants that we see in Game of Thrones. I think he kind of pulled a little bit from these mythologies. Even Lord of the Rings, they describe the different lands as the ring lands, and in these different rings there are different caste systems. So when it talks about the devil getting cast out of heaven, I think that's what it's referring to. He's going down to a different ringland and a different caste system. And to me, I believe that the world was broken up in 3 segments. I think that's why we get the 33 parallel and the 66, and then the thirds, 3, 6, and 9. I think that all has to do with the maybe even possibly the Trinity. I don't know, but the 3 different segments of Earth. You have Upper Earth, which is if you go like Lord of the Rings style, it's high elves, and then you get Midgard, and then you get dark elves in the south. And I think that all has to do with a description of what the people in those areas look like and whatnot. You have a lot of the darker skinned and browner skinned people around the equator and in the southern pole, and you have these lighter skinned people in the north. And anyways, in the north, so when the ice happened, they got stuck in the ice in the top.
So were they the only people on Earth when the ice occurred?
No, they were not. They're the only people in the north.
Okay.
There was still people everywhere else. So when you hear these stories of Atlantis and the 10 kings, I think these are the 10 tropical kingdoms of Atlantis. These are the 10 kings that came out of there. Okay. And there was still the other 3 that were still trapped in the ice until 10,000 BC.
Okay, so
if we go with that time scheme or time period or way of judging time, I guess.
So do they say how they were created?
They say Per created them, and they're all sons of Per. They're Per sons.
Per? They were just like basically out of thin air, they were just created?
They don't explain how they were necessarily created.
They were just paired off? Is that what that means?
No, they had a god named Per, and
Okay.
they were the sons of Per, the people.
Okay.
So that's where the word person comes from. Is what they say. They don't, to my knowledge, they don't describe that. They do describe a time period in which there wasn't very many people on the planet or up there in the north, and they had to mate with a goat.
They had to mate with a goat.
Yes. So that's where you get a lot of this goat mythology.
So were there beings born from this mating with animals?
Yeah. They are the goat people. I kind of believe that maybe it was probably something that happened in the age of forget what age that is, dang it. What age is the goat? Capricorn. So I think maybe they came from the time period of Capricorn and not necessarily that they mated with goats, though is very interesting. I don't know if you heard of the homunculus and the pig hybrid that created humans or not, but the goat is related to a pig because they're both hoof foot, and also the cow. And
I think that pigs actually came from humans. That
okay, well there you go.
They're a mixture of boars and human together make pigs, and that's why pigs can carry human intestines and body parts and babies and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
so maybe
similar with the goat too. So the goat was the predecessor to the pig and to the other like cows and stuff.
Okay,
too.
so the way that I see this is that maybe instead of sex, maybe it was a mixing of DNA. Maybe they ran out of genes from different beings that they who they were, and they needed to go outside of
Yeah.
themselves.
Possibly people were dying off and they needed some way to
Continue
keep
on.
humanity going, and that was the only thing that they had around was goats. And so I but
Oh,
I
wow.
kind of think it's more symbology for the fact that they lived in the higher mountains too. These heathen people were wild people and they lived in the mountains, and so I think maybe that has something to do with the goat symbology, and maybe they were around in the time of Capricorn. I think it's Capricorn or Sagittarius. Which one's the goat? I
Yeah,
can't remember.
Capricorn, right, Mimi? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have a zodiac right in front of me. I forget. Let's see. I can't.
And then if you-
Capricorn. Yeah, it's a
It's
goat.
Capricorn.
Yeah. Sagittarius is the guy on the horse. Centaur.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think a lot of stuff, I try to use the symbology of a lot of things unless I can prove the actual stuff. So I kind of go different ways with it, but
Well, that's interesting. So, so I heard you saying on with Andy that maybe they were performing oral on themselves, and when you were talking about this, it immediately brought the image of an Ouroboros to mind.
okay,
That-
yeah.
That it would be, and this was something they were doing in order to, for spiritual reasons, in order to not spill the seed.
Yeah. So that translates also into the Bible too, of of not masturbating and procreating with your woman or wife or whatever she is, and and not using contraceptive or whatever, because that's what's meant to be. I think it kind of translates a little bit into that. But yeah, the offering system is where they would basically contort their body in a circle and offer up their own semen to themselves if they needed to do that, because you weren't supposed to let your seed go. They believe this made you stronger and more powerful and all these different things that increased your strength, and it was good for yourself to ingest these things.
And that's what maybe where yoga comes from, these certain poses.
Oh yeah, they would have to do these. Well, yoga also comes from the fact that they would make these shapes in runes. They would do the shapes of the runes, sort of as I don't know. Some people will say magical. I think it was more like, have you heard the story of martial arts? I think it comes from like Wu-Tang Clan. Actually, I heard it on Joe Rogan. He says the monk trains his brain really strong, but his body is very frail and weak. And then somebody that practices karate is good and physical and strong, but they're weak in the brain. So they need to combine it. And that's where martial arts comes from. And it's the art of keeping your mind strong and your body strong.
The Shaolin monks.
Yeah. And so I think kind of like that, it like the two things together. So with the yoga and the runic yoga, I think it was to keep their body strong and their mind strong so they could battle.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. And for myself, I have done 105 days celibate with purposely raising my internal seed, but I
Yeah.
didn't, keep it. I didn't do it that way, the way that we were talking about. But it does make you spiritually stronger. You start to, when you start to make your body bend to your will, then it's like, what other things can I do? It's like you truly
Yeah.
become limitless.
There's a whole thing. They call it the offering system. That's the offer ring. You're making that offer to yourself and also to others. When their whole procreation system is the same way. So the last child in the family, the 13th son, I believe it was the 13th, would be the procreator of the family, and the first one would be the king, and all the other ones in between would not have any children. And so the Bock Saga, the Bock line, was the last son. It was the procreation line. And the first son was a representation of the moon and the king. And the moon is also called Kingu, which obviously means king. So it's very interesting that those conjoin. And also the sun was the last son, and the sun was a procreation of the sons, the sons of the sun. So the 13th son, they said that once the ice age happened, though, they had to go down to 7. And then later on, the king system started. And then later on, there was a person called Moshi, which was a female and not a male. And she introduced marriage and other ideas of only being with one person. And so the marriage system was very anti-heathen, and so they didn't really like her very much, even though she came out of the Acer. So the Acer basically is like the kingdom of heaven, and the angels that come out of the kingdom of heaven are these angels that come from the Acer. They even say that Jesus was one of these angels that came from the Acer. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff with that. If you think of it as that is the kingdom of crystals, and like you could see big old ice structures being crystalline looking and whatnot. There's a lot of interesting different concepts in the whole saga itself, and the offering system. So all the other children in that offering line from 1 to 12 would all give that last, and it might even be 12. I might be doing that wrong, but anyways, the last son would get have to drink all the juice before before the honeymoon.
Oh man.
And there's a whole thing about the honeymoon too, and also the female would have to do this also, and she would have to drink all the juice. And this is what is known as the nectar of the gods, or the ambrosia.
Well, this explains a lot about secret societies, I'll tell you that, and why they treat their children that way. Wow.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So it's interesting in that sense. And what their thought is that because they were pretty much consuming all of this, it was making them stronger. And then they had like this whole carnival thing and procreation system where the men would have to fight, and it was Boxing Day is what it was called. Boxing, that's where boxing comes from. And they had this day where they would do all these different games, and the men would have to like show their strength in order to procreate with one of these females. And the strongest last born son would be able to get the right to procreate with one of these other females. And with the females, they would take the most beautiful and prettiest ones, which is very interesting because a lot of the people say that angels are very beautiful in style and looks and everything like that.
Right.
So that's part of like the whole, it was more of survival of the fittest, and because they were consuming each other's sperm and juices and everything, they were building their own selves up to be stronger, and when it came time to procreate, they would have also strong children that could survive. And perhaps because they were in such hostile conditions, they really needed to stay strong and well built. If you hear a lot of the stories of like these different angels and different people from the north, they're always usually pretty strong and stocky and really tall. I was telling you about how I come from the Nephilim line, or the serpent seed, or whatever you want to call it. In my DNA, or my genealogy, I'm related to Rollo the Viking, and he married the daughter of King Charlemagne. And but his name before he became French was Genghar Hrolf, and he got that name because he couldn't ride a normal sized horse. His feet would drag on the ground. So I think Genghar Hrolf means feet dragging or something to that effect. And so he was too big to ride a normal horse. So it's in the myths, it's in the legends that there was the giant people and the giants and everything else. So it's very, very interesting to say the least. That's why we're diving into it a little deeper to see if we can pull out some of these other things and see what truth there is behind it all, you know. Also, if you look in the Sumerians, you see that Enki had horns coming out of his head, or even the headdresses themselves had like mini horns on them. They had 5 horns and 6 or 4 horns, 2, 4, or 6 horns. And I think the females had the even or the odd, the odd.
So 1, 3, or 5.
Yeah.
Okay. So did they have elongated heads?
It doesn't mention anything like that in the Bible, but when we talked to Gary Wayne, he said that the Seraphim and the Raphaim had these reptile features and elongated heads and stuff. So
like the Egyptians.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's super interesting. I don't know what they would have looked like or whatnot, but I know that Peru is their Piru is means devil.
Okay.
And in Peru is where they find a lot of these elongated heads. That could have something to do with that also.
And people going down to Peru to do all these ayahuasca ceremonies, is that maybe the snake, the serpent luring you back down?
I mean, you never, I don't know. I don't really think of the serpent or these people as evil as some other people would do, because I've taken out the dichotomy, and I think there's good and evil in everything. So I don't see them as evil necessarily. I think they have been deemed evil. You know, we talk a lot about in this conspiracy world, the flip, the upside down world, or how everything seems to be flipped on its head. Like things don't make sense. Things are the opposite of what you think they should be. And I think that's part of it. I think when the Catholic Church came in and destroyed a lot of these pagans, they demonized a lot of their beliefs and them as people, savages. I mean, you could look no further to like the Spaniards when they came to America and what they did to the American Indians and how they deemed them as evil people. I don't believe the Indians are evil people. I think they're great people. And I think everything has just been demonized. So I think that's part of it. You know, I think the technology that everybody talks about as being lost, I think it was alchemy. I think alchemy was the technology of the time. I think they had ideas of how to combine different things, and they knew how to work with rocks, and they knew how to work with the earth in general and use nature to its advantage instead of working against it, sort of like we do in this materialistic way. Now we chop trees down and then build houses out of them instead of just carving out a rock and living inside of it, you know, and living in it and with it, rather than you know, using it. Right. I guess you could say. Like I think of the Giving Tree. Remember that book, The Giving Tree?
Right.
Where he like takes a part of the tree every day, and then once he comes back, there's nothing left of the tree because he took everything from it and never gave anything back. And I think that's kind of what's going on now, and the earth is kind of Mother Earth is kind of angry and pushing out her anger through earthquakes and natural disasters. And you could get biblical with that too and say rapture or revelations or whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, so it's all interesting stuff.
I know, man. I know. I do that a lot myself. I'm like, God.
Well, it's all interesting stuff. I'm trying to imagine what these people may look like. Would they be white skinned, blonde hair, blue eyes from being under the ice, or did they originate that way?
So they say the Dan line had like the blonde hair, and the Svin line had the red hair.
Okay.
You
Red hair,
see a lot.
green eyes.
Yeah, you see a lot, and blonde hair, blue eyes. So you see a lot of these giants with red hair. They've even pulled some mummies out from Egypt, and they've had red hair, and some have even had blonde hair.
Right. And Genghis Khan was a redheaded giant, white skinned, but he's always depicted as Oriental or Asian, I should say.
Yeah, so I think maybe these other tropical kingdoms were not using this procreation system, and they were because they had to, because of the hostility of the climate. They needed to be strong, and for somehow they knew that this would help them. And they were creating stronger people in that sense. And these other tropical kingdoms didn't understand this technology that they had, because they had no need for it. They were still living in tropical areas, or they were ravaged by the catastrophes that happened. And then these people came down. I'm going to say it again, came down, not from the heavens or from the sky, but came down from the north, and we're helping these people re-civilize their civilizations. And I think that's where you get these Anunnaki people. I think that's where you get Quetzalcoatl and all these different gods. All these different gods, even according to Gary Wayne, are all Nephilim, or products of giants. And I kind of agree, but I kind of don't. I think some of them were natural giants, and other ones were created hybrid offspring of the giants and normal sized women. And I think so. I think some of these women were just of normal stature and size, and I don't think they were, but I think they were like maybe 5 feet tall, and these men were like 7 or 8 feet tall, or 9 feet at the tallest. I don't think we have no 50-foot giants, because you don't see any 50-foot giants. You see people that are 8 feet or 9 feet, rarely, but I mean, you do see people in the 7s and 8s sometimes, especially in NBA and football and other sports. There's usually bigger and stronger people.
Well, I know that when there was more oxygen and carbon dioxide, I mean, everything was larger. So I assume that humans would have been much larger than, I mean, they, even in biblical terms, they lived up to 900 years. And this. So I think that we tend to look at things through our filter of what we can perceive. But we couldn't even imagine what it's like because of how different it really is. So, but I do agree that it's definitely, everything is a product of DNA manipulation, that it's humans mixed with beasts, birds, and reptiles, as how these different aliens come along, all these different Nephilim or Raphaim, how they all come along at different times is a product, I believe, of human DNA being mixed with everything else of this world.
So do you think it's like lab done mixture, or just hybridization?
So what do you mean hybridization? Like a natural occurrence?
Through sexual contact, yeah.
No, I don't think that's possible. I think that's why they had to keep doing it, and why we had to keep going further into the dream, or why we had to keep getting smaller and smaller, is because whoever was doing this knew they weren't supposed to, and they were running from God, essentially. And so they kept going down deeper and deeper to get away with their deeds. And it's about to start occurring again. I'm sure you saw the trailer for Lamb and the transhumanism.
Transhumanism thing. I'm not really sure that we were ever able to do that before in the past. I know people will point to Egypt, but Egypt, they believe that they were called Neters, Neter, and they were symbolic to have the characteristics of that animal, not necessarily be the animal. And in Egypt, everybody was aware of this. We kind of look at it as something transhuman, because we're trying to compare it with something that we're experiencing in our own lives. But I don't think it was ever that way. There was no whatever what minotaurs or what's another like centaur.
I think all that stuff was there. Could be. So the way that I look at it, if I'm a person, no matter what time period I'm in, if I'm a person and I want to write something down that seemingly is important enough to write down, I'm going to write down literal things. I'm not going to leave it up to interpretation. We were just talking about Gary Wayne and how he doesn't leave it up to interpretation. Now, the way we see the world, our pineal glands are all closed. We all understand that we're not as spiritually connected as the ancients were. So when we have little imagination, and I say this going from a caveman that I was, I was put block here, I was very much stuck in the matrix world, and I had no imagination whatsoever. So and now what I experience on a regular basis is the most incredible things ever, that I can affect physical reality through meditation, through spiritual means. And I encounter all these different things, all these different beings. So when I started understanding that when I started taking everything as literal, it started making much more sense to me when I'm putting together all these mythologies but I'm doing it literal. Sometimes we like to say we fit the narrative, like, okay, I'll use this as a metaphor. Okay, I'll use this as literal. Okay, I'll use this as an allegory. We pick and choose, but you have to really do it one way or the other in order to understand it in a full capacity. So when I started literally looking at everything, it started making more sense to me. And it's in the book of Enoch in the Bible says that the fallen angels were manipulating the DNA from the humans, the birds, the beasts, the reptiles. And then I look around at Egypt with the bird-headed beings, all the different ones that are all over the place, and not just Egypt, but you have the dog-headed being Saint Christopher in Catholicism. There's so many different things, and as to where all these larger things went, their bones or whatever, I think that we're living on them. I think that their flesh turned into the dirt that we're on now, that maybe in where they are, that they're just napping, and we are the byproduct of a dream that they're having in some sense. We're deeper into the dream. So I don't exactly know how it all works, but I look around and I can see as above, so below, and everything. It's working on so many different scales. So
I think when it talks about the manipulation of the beasts of the field, I think what it's talking about is they're domesticating animals. I think that's animal husbandry.
Okay.
And so they're taking the bulls or the calves from the field, and then they were using them to breed so they could eat them, or taking wild horses, and domesticating them so they could ride them, and stuff of that nature. When it talks about in Genesis 6 is the Satan and his goons, I guess, the fallen angels, they came down and had sex with these women and created these Nephilim, or these gods, I guess you could say, because all these gods from Greek and Roman times are basically the Nephilim gods. So they are a product of Satan. So and that could go either way. You could either believe it's actual Satan or not actual Satan, but Odin is considered Satan too, and I think that this guy Ra was a whole different thing. And I think Devil and Lucifer and Satan they're all different. They get conjoined together now. But I think Lucifer is a representation of the moon and the adversary of the sun, and it's always on the other side of the sun, so opposite side. So I think it's always about the sun and the moon, and everything was about constellations and things in the sky and the sky clock, and I think they represented those things into stories to tell us, to hide some of that knowledge. And I think some of the knowledge is surface level. I think some of it is more deeper, and then I think some of it is only for the higher up people. I think there's there's 3 different interpretations. I think you can interpret the Bible in 3 different ways. If you look at it, celestial, terrestrially, and telestially, you can get 3 different descriptions. I think when they talk about the Essenes and Lazarus rising from the dead, they were in the Essenes version, they were talking about how they were just rising him up from, he was being born again. He was being born into the faith. So he was rising up from the depths of the dead people that are zombies like everybody else.
Like he
And
fully awakened them right away.
like he was awakened into the faith now. And I think so. That's one of the stories of Lazarus, because we don't see people coming from the dead. We don't see big giant things in the land. We don't see big monsters or anything like that. So I kind of go, well, if I don't see it now, then maybe that's just a little bit of what's it called when you exaggeration, embellishing. That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
It's, just embellished for the stories of legends and stuff. But really, when you get into it and you understand, like just like the mystery schools, like there's different levels in the mystery schools, right? There's something that they give to all the normal people, and then for the actual initiates, they learn more, and then for the really higher up the depths, they have this all the knowledge. And
Right.
I think that's how we should look at things, because I think that's how it was meant to be looked at. And I think that's why there's so many different decipherments that you can get out of the Bible also.
Okay. I wanted to touch on Odin because you brought Odin up
Odin.
twice here. So interesting. I found out yesterday that Odin gave his right eye for knowledge, which sounds a lot like the Illuminati Black Eye Club to me. In that that they give themselves over to the all-seeing eye. They essentially link up with this dream world that we're in, whatever Mother Matrix type of, or Mother Earth, whatever, someone wants to term
I like
it.
that, Mother Matrix. I like that.
Well, Matrix, Mother and Matrix are the same thing essentially. So somehow that they are giving themselves over, and that's maybe what the black eye is that it is now seeing through that person's eye, and that's maybe explains the Matrix movies, and where Agent Smith can then pop up out of anywhere, because whoever is accessing this can see it through all these different people's eyes, because unless you get rid of it, that it's actually looking through you, and just our normal everyday behaviors that we're being mind tricked into, with all the different symbologies and things we're singing and don't know that we're actually saying, and all the magic that we're doing that they're helping us do on a regular basis. So I think that maybe Odin, you're saying he represents Satan. I've never heard that, but it's interesting that I found out just yesterday that he gave his one eye in order to gain knowledge, which is what the Illuminati really is.
So I see it a little bit differently. Something interesting though is that language, the alphabet comes from All Father Bait. So it's like the hook of the All Father to get people into this dimensional thinking, or this because in the pagan way, everything was oral, nothing was really written down,
right?
And so they formed the alphabet was kind of a matrix in itself to entrap people, because you're not using the vibration, and you're using spells and incantations. Part of the reason why my name is Danunaki, which is what I go by, is because I came across an article on Ancient Origins Online, and it was saying that, and there is a civilization called the Danube River Valley Civilization that predates the Sumerians by like 2,000 to 3,000 years, and that they found a writing system for them. People believe it's false or fake or falsified, but what's interesting is what they say is that the the writing system that they were using was symbols and used for magic or incantations. It wasn't used for trading and barter and stuff like that, like what it became to be known for as like notes of trade and everything. So, or accounting. So it's very interesting that there's this magical aspect to the origin of possibly words in the alphabet and spelling, and before everything was an oral tradition. And so maybe that's how things got messed up, or Babylon, you know, the Tower of Babylon. So I mean, and then with Odin and the Black Eye Club and stuff like that, and the Illuminati was founded in what was it, 1776, I think. I think it was the same time as when the Declaration of Independence was formed.
Right.
And I just recently did an episode with the Mondays, and they were talking about how the Jesuits infiltrated the Freemasons, and maybe even are responsible for killing some of the presidents. And everything.
I just finished that one today, actually.
Yeah, so I think when we talk about trickery, I think there's a lot of tricks that have been played on us. I don't think anything is as what we think it is, and things are being manipulated in ways that we can't understand. And when we think it's one person, it's actually a different person, and we all kind of try to live in this dichotomy of good and evil. And like I said, everything is good and evil, so everything is good and bad. And these different, I think there's not even one or two different factions. I think there's multiple different factions, and they're all trying to fight for
supremacy,
reign over this planet. And I think they're all using their different things, and some of them are ganging up together, and they might seem on this side, but they're really on that side. And you know, who knows? I think it's almost impossible to unravel and to figure out in the long run. But definitely something is going on. But the Illuminati and the 1776 Declaration of Independence, I think is very interesting. That happened around the same time, and you have all these Freemason founding fathers, and even Roman was like, dude, Freemasons are evil, man. And I was like, well, then why would they have come to America? It gave everybody the freedom of religion and the freedom of press and the freedom of speech, allowed us to have guns and everything else if they wanted to come here to oppress us. Doesn't seem like they would give us all those rights.
Well, you make a interesting case. I do think that they came here for freedom of religion so that they would be free from persecution for their practices that maybe aren't the best, but you know, that's neither here nor there. But it is interesting, like you were saying, the end of the 1700s, the United States and the Illuminati were both formed, and you also had constitutions. I think in all five eyes happened in the late 1700s. I actually think that the rapture occurred in the late 1700s. And it's interesting that you're talking about Yake from Sweden. Are you familiar with Emanuel Swedenborg?
No.
Okay, yeah, you should check out. So his original name was Emanuel Swedesberg. Okay. But he was so Sven, but with a D, you know.
Okay.
Svedberg was honorarily given Swedenborg, because he was a scientist, a major scientist, born in 1692, I believe. And then in 1744, so he's like one of these super scientific guys, you know, he's making all these breakthroughs, scientific discoveries, no spiritual nature to him whatsoever. And then I think it was 1744, something along those lines, he wakes up Easter morning, and Jesus Christ is standing at the edge of his bed in spirit form, and tells him all about the coming rapture, that the second coming is there. And he starts to have all these psychic abilities. All of a sudden he's a member of parliament, and there's all this weird stuff going on where he 8 months before he dies, he says, I'm going to be no more. on this day next year, and I think it was March 29th, and he died that day, and he died in 1772. So, and he said that, the second coming is now, the rapture is happening now. So, and then what we have in the 1800s, the year without a summer, the World War in 1812, the Carrington event 1859, the gold rush in the America, so much different stuff. But
Tartaria is all that time period too.
that's when it's all destroyed. So
yeah, that's when it gets destroyed. Yeah, exactly.
and in the Bible, it says that the second time the earth is destroyed, it will be by fire, which we look at every major American city, and actually every city around the world that had a World's Fair had a major fire within years before that happening. And is that from God sending fire down because it was the second ending of the world? And so that's where I kind of believe that we're beyond the rapture and Revelations. When you were talking about that earlier, it's interesting. If that were the case, then maybe we might have a little bit more clear picture of where we are. But I did want to bring it back to the Bock Saga to finish off here. So
Atlantis.
Yeah, so Atlantis. So all land, ice, Atlantis. So
yeah.
So why don't you get into the Atlantis part of it for a little bit here?
Yeah, so what they say is they are Atlantis, and Atlantis means alt land east. That's how they say it in the Swedish, and it means all land is ice. So that's when all the lands froze over. So you have England, Ireland, Scotland, Poland, Finland, all these different lands, right? All these lands turned to ice. So all these this whole north area region all turned to ice, and everything else was okay though. So what they say is that Atlantis was in Sweden, and then the interesting thing about Atlantis is it has 3 concentric rings, right? The 3-ring circus, or the 3 circles, the 3 ring lands. So I think it's in that plays into this whole aspect of Atlantis too. It's weird because you'd say, well, they were all entrapped in ice, so how would there be an Atlantis there? But there was like a warm stream that was going up, and in this one in the Baltic and stuff, it was able to create a livable, habitable area for people,
like an igloo almost.
Yeah, sort of like that. Yeah, but a little bit different. And they say there's these very high ice walls that entrap them in, kind of like the flat Earth model. So sometimes
Antarctica.
So sometimes I say, well, maybe they're just pissed off, and they entrapped us all in ice so we could see what it was like to have lived like they had to live. That's the only credence I give to flat Earth. But but other than that, I think there was a chain of islands in the Atlantic. I think there was these 10 kings that ruled these different islands and these different chains, these different areas. So like Richat, the Azores, there's a place called Donia in Spain on the coastline. I think the Americas, the eastern part of America, the Yucatan Peninsula, the coast of South America in the Atlantic, the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon has something called Terra Preta or Terra Firma. I can't remember which one. And it's like the soil that was manufactured by humans a long time ago. And they can't figure out where it came from. That's why everything grows so well and abundantly in the Amazon. If you look at something like these places like Mexico and like the quest for El Dorado and how it was buried under all these tropical plants and everything.
Right.
I think some of these pyramids were built to as cloud seeding machines to seed cloud productivities to enhance rain so that they could
Interesting.
grow crops, and especially in desert areas. I think that's why it's desert now. It's because these machines are not working anymore. And when they were working, they were able to have a more lush climate and tropical area. I think they're trying to recreate the paradise time, just like now people will say that they're trying to recreate the Atlantis time.
Wow, okay, that's interesting. And Amazon, aren't they finding that there's civilizations under all of the rainforestry now that it's being killed off?
Yeah, possibly. I'm not 100% sure. I know they find all kinds of weird stuff over there. I know there's pyramids in Cuba. Some of the biggest pyramids are actually in Mexico. They're bigger than the ones in Egypt, but nobody really talks about them that much. I think some of the younger Dryas stuff. I think one of the comets or the asteroids that landed hit in that Gulf area, and I think that's kind of what destroyed Atlantis, part of that Atlantis area anyways. Maybe it sunk the cities, maybe it's just America itself. I don't know. There's lots of different ideas about that. There's a Aztlan, which was like the western part of America. There's all kinds of different things with Egypt and Mexico too being connected with Cholo Choli. Oh man, I can't even say it, but it's basically Cholo, and it's the god of the undead, and he looks just like Anubis. It's a black dog, a hairless black dog with and even like the headdresses and stuff that they put him in, it's very Mayan looking, but then also it's very similar to Egypt too. And I think some of the people of Egypt say that they are the descendants of the Atlanteans.
Okay. Well, have you heard that maybe the Sphinx is actually Anubis originally and not a lion?
I have heard that I heard it was the god of the undead, which was Anubis. I've heard it was a female. I heard it was Ra. I've heard all kinds of different things. I think on the actual placard of the Sphinx, it has the story of the guy that was in the desert and saw the head of Anubis or something like that. And I mean, and when Napoleon got there, it was covered all the way up to its neck and dirt. So I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I think maybe it was probably had something to do with a lion in the age of Leo. Maybe that's when Ra went to Egypt, was in the age of Leo.
So it's interesting. Maybe Ra was one of those lion beings, like I was saying. A lion became a serpent later on, but maybe still had his hind legs at that time.
Well, I would give a lot of credence to that because in the saga, this is going to go off Atlantis, but what do you want me to do? You want me to do that part, or you want me to
whatever you're going on to?
Okay. Well, with Ra, so they say that there was this guy named Ra who the Acer people didn't really like very much, and he went to Hindustan with his consort Maya, and they were the prince and the queen of Hindustan. And then later Ra left that area and went down to Egypt and became Ra in Egypt. And then he left there. It doesn't, so this is off Bock Saga now. It just ends with Egypt. And then I put together that through the Exodus and stuff, basically he's leading people into Israel, which is Isis Ra El. So I believe that these are all the lands of Midgard, and Thor was sent to kill the Midgard serpent. So I think Thor was sent to kill or destroy Satan in these areas. And it's even said in Norse mythology that Loki was at one point the god of Jotunheim. And I think Jotunheim is the home of the Jews.
That's interesting.
So I think that this whole Midgard area was the mixture of Ra, of Satan, and the hybrid humans, and they created these hybrids, which was frowned upon by the Enlil god or the Odin or whatnot, because they were mixing their DNA with these other peoples, and the higher god didn't like that or didn't appreciate that. And if you think about it, that's kind of like what's going on in the world now, is this mixing of everything. Nothing is sacred anymore. We're mixing humans with animals. We're mixing sexes and races and everything else. I don't necessarily agree with any of that. I mean, I think, if you love somebody, you love somebody regardless of who they are or what they are. That's not my belief, but that's I'm just kind of going off of what it's saying in here.
Okay. So I wanted to have one more question. The Acer, you brought that up. Is this maybe the Ben stone? Are you familiar with the Ben stone?
Yeah, I know the Ben stone. Yeah, in Egypt.
Yeah, with the black cube, essentially, maybe the obelisk.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's the magnet that operates our magnetic pole.
I heard.
Is that what the Acer is?
Yeah. So, the Acer is the land around the magnetic mountain, right?
Okay.
So there's a magnetic mountain, or some people believe it was the tree of life when it got cut down, and that it was the stump that was left, and there's some magneticness to that. I'm not 100% sure. I know a lot of people will confound this with Satan or Saturn, and Saturn I think is related to Odin, because this might not even be Odin. It might be the god before Odin, essentially, because Saturn is related to Kronos and time. And so I think that has something to do with it. And Odin came after. He was one of the lesser gods. He wasn't one of the older ones.
Okay.
But the black box thing, I was talking to somebody online about this the other day, and they're saying how evil it was and everything. I said, well, you can always unroll a black box into a cross too. So how, I mean, I think people get consumed by these ideas of what is evil, and they go with it in a completely like fanatical way. And I don't think it's always that. Like, even with the Black Eye Club thing, like maybe it could be, but maybe it's people like not interpreting things correctly and thinking
100% we're not interpreting it correctly.
and they are continuing these things, or like child sacrifice and stuff. I don't think anybody sacrificed children or people back then. I highly doubt it. The way that people seem to care for one another, and I don't think that they would have sacrificed children. I mean, not to say that there isn't weird psychopaths that would do that, but
they found hundreds of thousands of remains in Mesoamerica of people who willingly, they would do this.
Well, I mean, possibly willingly, but
right.
But they
were
weren't
being tricked into it.
I know in some of the Viking stuff there was people who would willingly sacrifice themselves to the gods too, but that was all for the gods, right? It wasn't so I mean, it was for the Nephilim, so it was for the Satan gods,
right?
So I mean, it's hard. I don't really think there was a lot of people that were sacrificing people though, like it was like a normal everyday thing. I think maybe there's like a sacrificial time period or a certain time of the year where they maybe did a sacrifice, or like, a few times a year or whatnot. But I don't think it was like a thing where they're just throwing kids into the volcano every day.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And Mimi has to run out. she has to take home somebody. So she says
Okay.
goodbye, and it was nice to meet
Goodbye.
you.
Yeah. Has she seen any demons come out of me yet?
I will have to ask her. What'd you say? Oh no, she was talking to the dog. I thought she heard, but
It's fine, though.
yeah. So I do agree with that it wasn't just happening so blatantly, because I don't think that it could survive out in the open. That maybe it was more in the open than it is now, but maybe not. Maybe it was still the same type of way.
I think they did it for like the harvest, maybe the harvest period, or like it was like a thank you to the gods, same way Noah like sacrificed something and the gods smelled the blood or whatever after the ark had landed, or how, I forget how that whole story goes, but he sent up the crow and everything, and then when they went to sacrifice the meat, that's when God was like, oh hey, what you got there?
It's interesting. It is all very interesting. This was a great conversation. I mean, this Bock Saga, there's a lot to it.
There's tons to it, yeah.
Right. So anyone who listened for your first time being introduced to Bock Saga, you have to go check it out more so than we were able to get into tonight. But it is very interesting. It's a physical explanation to esoteric types of
belief systems.
Yeah. The counter of the spiritual stuff, which I tend to focus on a lot of, is the spiritual side. So it's fits in nicely, though.
I would say if you want to go into Bock Saga, you have to be very open-minded and spiritually awake already. I think you already have to have an idea of religions in general, and you have to be ready for your paradigm to kind of flip, because it's so different of a perspective because of where it's coming from, that it's very easy to get caught up into these negative things and to just run out and scream about the offering system and all these different things. I mean, yeah, they're weird, but there's weird stuff in the Bible too. I mean, there's incest in the Bible and weird plagues and everything else in there too. So child sacrifices and everything. So don't get too caught up on some of those things. I say take it as a perspective view and just understand what their worldview is, and maybe try to put that together with other things that about, maybe the Anunnaki and maybe the Greeks, or maybe the Egyptians, or all these other different types of things. And then when you get farther into it, you can like try to play with the language stuff, and then that's where it gets really interesting.
Last question for you. Have you ever heard that maybe God's name is A-E-I-O-U, whatever, however it would be pronounced?
I think I saw you post that.
Yeah.
And I actually asked somebody about it. One of our guests that's going to be on this month. This month we're doing Tartaria in November, and we're doing all kinds of different guests about Tartaria, and then we're going to have a joint group talk with a few other podcasts all together, and we're going to try to like iron out all this different types Tartaria stuff.
Nice.
And see what ideas and solutions we can come up with. But I did ask somebody, I think it was the Mad Hatter. I think I asked him about it because he was talking about word magic. And so I do believe I asked him about like A-E-I-O-U, because I know that in the Hebrew they don't have the vowels in there.
Too sacred.
Yeah, because they're sacred sounds. And so it would make sense that A-E-I-O-U is Yahweh, A-E-I-O-U. I don't know
Yahuwah, I think it would be pronounced.
Yeah, Yahuwah.
Yeah, and it would be like, the way that I interpret it is it would be spelled, if you use the consonants and the vowels, it would be like Y-A-H E-I-O UWH, you know, and because it
Mhm.
makes the WH together makes that whoa, like the whip or
Yeah,
white.
yeah. I heard Yahweh too was Mercury. Um, the guy was showing the symbol of Thoth, the time. Uh, what's that called? The hourglass thing.
Okay.
You if you look at Egyptian hieroglyphs, it shows like Mercury with like this hourglass type uh, uh, clothing on or something.
Okay.
It's like this hourglass and then arms and legs and a head coming out of it.
Right.
They
Right.
say that's Mercury. So they're saying that the breath, when you make the breath Yahweh, it
Yeah.
makes the breath like the hourglass shape. But that was a while ago. I don't know. So I can't even remember who I heard that from. That was like years ago.
I like that.
So a lot, yeah, a lot of, you know, the breath, the sound, the vibration, creation. I mean, a lot of those things have to do with speaking, and
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it has something to do with like how we got our vocal cords or something. Because
Right.
something that Andy likes to talk about a lot is how like everything sounded like baby talk at the beginning, like goo goo gaga shit, you know, like everything was very like little syllables like that, and like we're
Right.
just learning how to use our vocal cords somehow.
Mm.
So I kind of wonder about that too. Maybe like we didn't develop vocal cords until later, and maybe that's why we're using symbols and symbolism and stuff like that before, because we couldn't really speak yet.
That's interesting. And the vowels, the word veil, if you break that
Yeah,
down, it's
vow.
veil L, which would be a promise from God.
Yeah,
And what
yeah,
does everything tell us? That God is full of promises. That
yeah,
so his name would be, of course, it would be all promises.
yeah. I think we talked about that too. How it relates to a vow or an oath,
Yeah.
and how all the letters are sacred, and even to the point where like even a lot of the gods have vowel names, Inky
Mm-hmm.
and Enlil and Ea and everything. Even all the continents have like names and vowels.
And how many
And
gods are named Yah or Yo, whether it's IA
yeah,
or YAH or, you know, some
yeah,
form of it.
or sometimes why.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes it's why, you know, or
Yeah.
sometimes it's I, or I wonder sometimes if even J was at one point a vowel, just because there is
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of gods associated with the
Well,
J,
the
but I
J
think it was
was
an I
made up.
before the J.
Well, it was a mixture between like a G and an I, so they made the J, or it's a Y sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Makes a ya
I'm
sound or a is sound.
yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
learning Greek. I've been
Oh,
learning Greek for 150 days now, and it's
oh,
funny
awesome.
that so Yahweh written in Greek would be YHVH, which would actually be pronounced Genie. It would not be Yahweh. It would be Genie, like a
Oh,
genie.
like a genie, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So
I used the acronym MAGI for the god I believe in. It's a master architect, grand
okay.
intelligence. Because I don't believe in per se like a humanistic god, and I believe that worshiping gods gives all your energy to them, and I believe giving energy to yourself is the right way to go in empowering yourself. And so my idea of God is a galactic being. I think you kind of touched on this. I heard you say it, and I was like, hey, I actually believe that same thing. You were talking about how like basically we live in a cell, like our planet is a cell. We're all made of cells, so,
Mm-hmm.
atoms, right? And if you go up and up and up, you see like solar systems are just larger cells, and then what's bigger and bigger and bigger, and then pretty soon you end up with like this galactic human. And so that's what I think the Magi is.
Well, and that's how
And
we're in a ball, right? Because it's always the starting point and the ending point. You know, I think it's kind of records
circle,
on records that circles back around,
yeah,
and it's really the same story playing out on so many different scales and fractals. And
Yeah.
we'll have to talk about it maybe on your podcast about
Yeah.
Jesus, how I've come to know Jesus as God, where I was, and we could spend the rest of eternity talking about these types of things. So I don't want to get into it now, but I am very much in tune with what you're saying, with the so incomprehensible that we can't comprehend God.
Yeah, we just can't comprehend it.
Right. Yeah. But it actually is Jesus Christ. Is the thing, is when you circles all back around, it turns as above, so below. Jesus is God below, like where we are. So we'll have to delve into that.
Yeah, we will. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
like-
for sure.
I like that stuff.
Yeah, so this was a wonderful podcast, and like I was saying, if anyone's interested in the Bock Saga, make sure you check out your new show with Andy and Yake. Am I saying that right, Yake?
Yeah, Yake. Well, the first episode will be on the Deep Share podcast with Andy Rouse, and it'll also be on Rising from the Ashes with Roman and myself. And then we might put 1 or 2 episodes on there just to lead people to the regular podcast that we're going to be having with all the episodes on that podcast. But we want to kind of get people used to hearing it and know where to go find it at first. So, well,
I know that I am definitely looking forward to it. And you have a great episode, which is a really pretty in-depth introductory into it on Andy's podcast not too long ago. So
I just recently
go check that out on the Deep Share podcast.
Yeah, I just recently put that episode on the Rising from the Ashes feed too, because we're doing this Tartaria month, and I tie the whole Bock Saga idea into other history and then kind of connect it all into this whole Tartaria thing. And, so it's interesting. I don't think all of it is 100% correct. I think there's holes in it. I think I don't think it's a perfect theory, but it's a theory nonetheless, and it's interesting. And I think part of it is to figure out where I'm wrong and correct those things, and where I'm right, and keep those things going. Yeah, and just add to it and develop it out more further by talking to all these wonderful people that we get to talk to on our podcast. I have so much fun just talking to people. It's fun to it's hard sometimes to find people that are on your wavelength and the ways of thinking, I guess you could say, or the things that we're into. So
to find someone open-minded enough.
Yeah, so it's really great to be able to have conversations with people about these ideas and to sort them out in your head with somebody else instead of just in your own head all the time.
Yeah,
I think
podcasting is a beautiful thing.
I think that's how we learn, and that's how we grow, and that's how we have these deeper conversations. And I really want to try to work to like actually figure some of this stuff out and not just talk about it and go around in circles all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that anyone listening to this has definitely learned several things, and they will have plenty to research now that they have heard us
good
get into it. Do you want to let the audience know where they can find you?
You can check me out on Instagram on my RFTA podcast. It's me on there. Roman, I don't think he's on Instagram anymore. He might be. We do have a Telegram channel. You can get to the Telegram channel from the Instagram, and we have a chat room in there set up, and people can come talk to us there. You can also email us at risingftashes@yahoo.com if you have any inquiries, or you want to say something or request anything or whatever you want. Also, other podcasters out there, if you want to be a guest on our show too, like hit us up. Like, we love talking to everybody. I don't care what you believe or what you anything is cool with me. I think of it as like a mind strengthening process regardless. And we like to have deep conversations and talk to everybody. So I welcome everything.
And there you have it, folks. Go check them out. Go check out Danunaki Dan and the homie Romy on Rising from the Ashes podcast.
Yeah.
Make sure you definitely send your love. But before we stop the recording here, I just want to put this out there for anyone studying the Tartaria stuff. Have you come across King Giannis or King Janus?
No.
Okay, so that is something that you might, and when I said quiet, I was talking to my dog, sorry. But that is something that you might want to look into. It's so I just have this little theory popping in my mind that King James may be involved in this. The NBA actually might be involved in this, and then we have LeBron James, King James of the West, and then you have Giannis Antetokounmpo in the East, and he's the MVP, and you got the two fighting because King Giannis is a two-faced person who was completely evil and completely holy all at the same time, and it's very doppelganger-esque. It's very dualistic.
Yeah.
And so all the coins, have you come across the coin phenomenon with Tartaria?
No.
Involved with Fomenko's timeline deception, why he thinks it's timeline deception, or part of it anyway, is so there's these coins.
What's these coins?
That they all say I 570, I 960, but they're attributed to being a 1.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people think that maybe that's the millennial kingdom, that it was Jesus or Jesus as they say, but actually there was a king named Janus or Janus, which we were talking about, the J's and the I's, so it's actually probably his.
Interesting. I'm glad you did bring that up though, because it could be Julius Caesar also, I've heard. I think if it was a J 1570, people would know that it's not new, that it would probably have been from that time period. So I don't see how that gets confused with like a missing 1,000 years.
Well, because so there isn't really, I mean, I haven't done a total thing into it, but these coins don't look all that old. What they're saying is that maybe there was no 1570, that it was just 570, and that somehow we're only at like the year 1200. I'm talking to someone tomorrow about that, so I'm not up to date on the Fomenko stuff.
Ari Asulin is going to be on our show again. He's going to be the last episode of this Tartaria month, and Fomenko and those that whole Russian idea of Tartaria and everything is what we're going to be going deep into with him, because I really want to flesh out some of this Fomenko stuff, because I find it super interesting. And we talked to a witch who's a good witch. She's a natural witch. Some people think of witches as evil, but I do not. But she was also an astrologer, and she was saying that by the sidereal astrology, that we're actually still in Pisces for another like 780 years, and we haven't actually reached Aquarius yet, which is interesting to me. But that might not necessarily mean that we're actually missing 1,000 years of physical history. It could just mean that they're trying to chump us up 1,000 years in astrological history. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're like not changing the calendar, or they're changing the calendar to account for this, but it's not really, that part's not correct. We're still in the right time period. I don't know. It's interesting, and I do want to learn more about it, because I think somebody also said that like the time in Jerusalem is like 5,000 something. It's not
6,000,
or I don't know what the actual number is, but it's not like it is here. It's not, it's not 2020
Well, in Freemasonry,
because they go from the beginning of what they consider time to what in one
Right.
linear fashion, and it's only like 5,000 or 6,000 years, 7,000.
right,
something
right,
like
and
that.
Freemasonry is the same thing basically. So I think it's in Jerusalem, and maybe they say it's 4004 BC is when time started, and
Yeah.
Freemasonry is 4,000 years to whatever the current day is, the current year is. That's how
Mhm.
they keep track. So it's probably something along those lines. But it's interesting with the Sidriel, and this is the last thing I'll say about anything, is that the Sidriel is the Ophiuchus sign coming into fruition now throws it back. So is it actually that it's back, or maybe Ophiuchus was never there and it's now there? So now it appears that we're back in time, but we're actually
Yeah.
not back in time.
Yeah.
It's a whole
And
mess of
is the
situation.
story of the 12 tribes or the 13 tribes the same story as the astrology and the 13
Right.
tribe getting kicked out of the Olympus, if you will, then, and that's
Mm-hmm.
being Ophiuchus with the man holding the snake and the serpent and relating back to Dan and everything else.
And there you have it, folks. Dan is full of knowledge like this. Go catch him on his new podcast, Roots of Creation. Catch him on his current podcast, Rising from the Ashes. Make sure you send your love, and we will talk to you guys later. Bye.